He ranks as the most reclusive Hollywood director of the last quarter century. To industry insiders, Alan Smithee is as controversial as Tarantino, as eclectic as Spielberg. His 47 feature films should have made him a familiar figure on Hollywood's red carpets, a fixture at its glamorous parties and glittering award shows. Yet Alan Smithee has never attended a film premiere, has never given a single interview, has never even been seen in public.
Stand by.
He is Alan Smithee.
On the line is the director, Alan Smithee.
I am not going to talk about Alan Smithee.
Hey!
Alan Smithee is the secret shame of Hollywood. He's the man Hollywood would prefer we not know about, not talk about, and not ask any questions about.
Cut it right there. No! No, no, no!
Why are you so insecure you can't take any suggestions?
It's awful. Action!
In an industry that feeds on publicity, Alan Smithee is the ultimate anomaly. For decades, publicists struggled to keep his name out of the gossip columns and off the pages of the industry trades.
Alan Smithee is, in a sense, to flag for the people who know what the name means, to know that there was trouble. Doesn't mean the movie's bad. It doesn't mean the movie is good. It doesn't mean really anything except that some poor soul bled over that decision and took their name off that picture because it was not his or her vision.
How could this ultimate insider, one of the industry's most prolific directors, also be its most shadowy phantom? Simple. Alan Smithee does not exist. He is instead a secret pseudonym for movie directors who don't want to take credit for films they are ashamed of.
You put your name on it and it's because you're proud of it. That's why anyone puts their name on something, because they're proud of their contribution. So I didn't want my name on this because I wasn't proud of it.
When you see an Alan Smithee film, that's always, inevitably, the result of a director who didn't have any power.
Action!
It means that the studio did something that I hated. Kicked me off the set, you did reshoots, you locked me out of the editing room. So his last resort was, okay, but it's not going to have my name on it.
The director has to take into serious consideration, can I put my name on this picture? Will it embarrass me, humiliate me, disgust me for the rest of my life? I give you my name to put my name on this picture and you've completely bastardized it? It's a very, very serious, heartbreaking consideration for a director to think about taking their name off a picture.
Most movies take a lot of effort to make. You know, even if the shoot is 3 months before that, there's a lot of script work, there's a tremendous amount of pre-production that goes into it. A film is a year investment in your life. And then to come out at the end of that process and ask to have your name taken off that product, that's a wasted year of your life.
You don't see that happening to Steven Spielberg. You would never see that happening to Stanley Kubrick or Clint Eastwood. Those are guys that control every little part of the film. They never worry about the Alan Smithee question.
But in an industry of blockbuster egos and mind-boggling budgets, only superstar directors have complete control.
Full rehearsal.
Everyone else walks a tightrope of compromise and often intense conflict.
You always have conflicts because you have a lot of strong-willed people. You have a director who, by definition, should have a very strong sense of the kind of movie they want to make.
Okay.
Sometimes you have a really strong producer that has their vision of the film. Then you have the studio that, in its own way, has a really strong vision of the film's commercial potential.
Let's get Robin, get on the stage, please.
So when the director's artistic ideas get in the way or conflict with the studio's commercial concept, that's where you have big fights.
Before the Hollywood studio system, the role of the director was very much part and parcel of a kind of entrepreneurial spirit. They had very small casts, very small crews. There certainly wasn't the sense of the director being a star. By the time Hollywood begins and really becomes the studio system in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s, by that point what happens is the director becomes a kind of functionary.
During Hollywood's golden age, from the 20s through the early 50s, the big studios ruled the roost.
Most directors were part of the hired hands of the studio. And they directed 3 or 4 or 5 movies a year. They were assigned projects. They were given scripts to direct. They were told who the stars were. Everything was planned out for them.
But as the studio system disintegrated in the late 50s and 60s, directors began to have more and more control of their films. With that new power came increasing tension.
Filmmaking is a director's medium. You have all these different people involved in the process, but the director is the general.
Hollywood has gone through many different phases, you know, producer control, agent control, actor control, director control, whatever control.
The director is the boss, but that's by the nature of the way film is made. It doesn't say that the director is smarter than the writer or smarter than the producer, but the director is the only one in contact with every aspect of the film, and you can only have one vision.
It is a kind of a general perception, I think born out of the 1960s auteur concept, that the directors are the person who determine what the movie is. That's just a lot of malarkey.
Most directors passionately believe that film should only reflect one vision, theirs. But many producers, studios, and even powerful stars strongly disagree. It was in this contemporary clash between directors' insistence on control and the harsh realities of big-budget filmmaking that Alan Smithee was born.
In 1968, Universal contracted director Robert Totten to work on the film Death of a Gunfighter, which starred Richard Widmark.
I think you're forgetting something.
About halfway into the shooting, Widmark complained he didn't like the way Totten was handling the shots and asked that he be replaced.
The studio reluctantly bowed to the demands of its powerful star. Totten was out, replacement director Donald Siegel was in.
Richard Widmark says, I want to call the shots, and the producers, of course, side with whoever's going to be most marketable. Don Siegel comes in and shoots for about 9 more days and spends 9 days working on the film.
The film was finished, but the controversy was just beginning. Totten fumed at his betrayal. Siegel felt he hadn't worked long enough to deserve a credit, so neither wanted director's billing on Death of a Gunfighter. Caught in an embarrassing and potentially disastrous impasse, Universal Studios appealed to the arbiter of last resort, the powerful Directors Guild of America.
The Directors Guild has been working for decades to try to get more power, more recognition for directors in Hollywood. But of course, the flip side to getting directors more power, more freedom to make films as they want is that directors have to take more responsibility for the films. So it's not an easy matter then of disowning the film.
Not easy for the director or the studio, which faced box office meltdown if the dispute went public. Trying to balance both the director's outrage and the studio's investment, the Directors Guild came up with a novel solution. They lied. They decided to credit Death of a Gunfighter to a pseudonym, a director who didn't exist. All they needed was a name no real director could possibly have.
So somebody said, let's make it John Smith. And we said, no, that's silly, because there's going to be John Smiths, and it's too much on the nose. Somebody else said, how about Alan Smith? I said, well, there's going to be Smiths. And somebody said, how about S-M-I-T-H-E? I said, also, I haven't seen that, but I am sure that it's possible. And they said, well, what would you do? And I said, I'd add an E. I said, that I don't think anybody is called Smithee. People say, yeah, it's not a bad idea, you know. So thus was Alan Smithee born.
Out of the conflicts on the set of Death of a Gunfighter, where the star is basically saying, I'm the person that's moving this film. I'm the one who will market this film. The director for the first time says, or 2 directors say, wait a second, the director might have a kind of starring role to play here as well.
There was just one potentially fatal flaw. The Smithee solution would fail if the critics or the public suspected it was a ruse. And so a veil was drawn around Alan Smithee, a cult of secrecy that would last for 30 years. Starting with Death of a Gunfighter, the secret held. The New York Times raved that director Alan Smithee, quote, has an adroit facility for scanning faces and extracting sharp background detail. Variety praised Smithee for keeping the action taut and said, quote, he draws convincing portrayals from the supporting cast. As more unhappy would-be auteurs began demanding to take their names off pictures, the mysterious Alan Smithee began showing up on all kinds of films. To maintain secrecy, directors who took a Smithee credit had to submit to a code of silence.
It was a fair compromise with the studios, who had their concerns about the reputations of their pictures, and knowing that a picture that is stamped with a conflict already has a black mark against it.
When you hear rumors that there's trouble between the director and a star, or the studio and the director, or just trouble on the set, rumors in general, it's bad publicity, and then it makes people think this is going to be a bad movie.
The last thing they want is everyone discussing, did the director walk off the picture, or was the director locked out of the editing room? That's bad publicity. That starts to create doubt in moviegoers' minds.
For the next 30 years, the name Alan Smithee would become a secret signal to industry insiders, a sign that some terrible conflict had marred the making of a film. To those in the know, the name Alan Smithee spelled quite literally trouble.
That is what is great about Alan Smithee, is really what it accomplishes in resolving difficult conflicts without using the name. By asking for their name to be removed from the picture, a compromise is made with the producers of the studio. The problem is resolved without resorting to a pseudonym. That's really the power of Alan Smithee.
But surprisingly, directors cannot remove their names from their films without permission, which is not always given.
The DGA checks it, and they may say, it's been changed, but it's still basically your vision. It's still your film. It's not where you want it, but it's yours, and you have to leave your name on it. Or they may say, hey, you just made a pretty poor movie and you want to take your name off? Forget it, you leave your name on. But they may also say, yes, you're right, this film has been changed, so there's no longer your vision. It's no longer your film, and you may take your name off.
So how bad do things have to get for directors to want to strike their names from their movies? Especially potential blockbusters with stars like Tom Cruise or Edward Norton. Really bad. One thing's for sure, on big-budget, high-profile pictures, the tension between the director's vision, the star's demands, and the studio's bottom line can blow a production right off the lot.
Conflict can arise from the notes that the studio gives a script, from what the producer wants to do with the movie, what the director wants to do with it, and then what the star wants to do with it.
Look at the conflicts and the disagreeableness in Hollywood. Look at how no one really has control. There's conflicts that are going on constantly.
A lot of times people think of creative conflict as going on between the studio and the director, that some suit will come down on the set from the lot, and that's where the fights are. Sometimes the fights are between the producers and the directors.
One famous battle erupted on the set of Shaft, when hot young director John Singleton locked horns with legendary producer Scott Rudin.
What I loved about that experience was it tested me in the sense that, I always think I'm right, and then I'm dealing with somebody else who always thinks they're right.
The original 1971 film featured heavy doses of sex and sensuality. When Scott Rudin tried to tone down the remake, he set the stage for an epic clash of egos with director Singleton.
My whole beef at that thing was I wasn't about to make an uncool movie, and I wasn't going to have somebody that I felt was uncool trying to tell me how to make the film. If I would have made a bad movie, I would have gotten blamed.
A similar conflict erupted in 1983 when successful indie director Martha Coolidge signed up for her first big studio film. She was about to learn a bitter lesson about Hollywood's bottom line.
I came off of Valley Girl, which was a really huge hit. Paramount offered me an exclusive deal. I went there, I'd looked at a lot of pictures, and they came up with the National Lampoon's The Joy of Sex. I got through the picture, fine, got into editing, and in post, they had made me put certain things in the picture. They'd made me put naked girls in the picture. So we were struggling between story and exploitation. After I delivered my cut, they told me not to come in. They essentially fired me and excluded me from the cutting room and brought in another editor. I really had nothing to do with the finished product on that picture.
I can't. This is all wrong.
I thought about taking my name off the picture. It certainly doesn't represent the quality of my work, and nor does it represent a vision that I had about the picture. The signs were there in pre-production. I should have known. Frankly, today, I wouldn't take my name off the picture. I would walk off the picture. You know, I thought, oh, well, it's, you know, it'll go away. And the movie is on all the time.
Coolidge learned the hard way that studios often hire directors for their famous names, not their artistic vision. But she's in good company.
Michael Moore told me a story, which was he was hired to direct a film called Canadian Bacon. It was John Candy's last film. Studios said to him, we're not going to release this film unless you recut it and make it funnier and less political. At which point Michael Moore, who's famous for being a funny political filmmaker, said, but that's who I am.
There are situations in which the people who hire directors do not take the director's job seriously, do not understand perhaps the director that they've hired. They may have hired more of a director than they bargained for.
Such a head-on collision seemed almost preordained when freeform director Robert Altman was tagged to direct the fast-paced John Grisham thriller, The Gingerbread Man.
But do they know who they're getting? What were they thinking? I mean, they were bringing in someone who makes quirky films that ramble on, that are almost the opposite of the tightly constructed formulaic plot that Grisham's films are famous for. They shoot the film, he shows it to the executives in the studios, and they're very happy with it. Then they decide to test market the film because $29 million is at stake here. So then they bring it and they market it to what Robert Altman describes as 14-year-old boys who live in the valley. Of course, they look at the film, they don't quite get it, it doesn't appeal to them. They go back to Altman, they say, can you make some changes? He does. Then they say, we're gonna test market it again, and he says, well, no, I don't want it. I'm done with the film. I'm walking away from it. The studios then say, we're gonna get a different editor on this, and we're gonna re-edit it. Altman says, I'm pulling my name off the film. I'm going to apply to put another name on it. The studio then goes ahead and finishes their cut and markets it again. And what they find is the market audience hates their new version more than they hated Altman. They go back to Altman and they say, okay, you do your version. He does. It's not a commercial success. It does reach a certain audience, but what were they expecting?
Desperate to recoup their investments, studios often resort to presumed crowd pleasers like gratuitous violence, sex, and nudity, even if it means ripping apart a finished film and a director's ego.
I do remember a case for Alan Smithee application that came in where a director had done a picture and the producers decided that maybe there wasn't as big a market for that picture as they had originally thought. So they went out with another director and shot nude scenes and inserted them throughout the movie. And the director wanted an Alan Smithee, which was granted by the Guild because you can understand. I mean, they just didn't direct a movie with those nude scenes, and I believe the nude scenes were with other actors.
There are big name directors, names that most people would recognize, who are bankable directors who still complain about problems with studios or producers and still have to deal with it. And they'll choose to edit them in New York City, 3,000 miles away from LA, for no other reason than it's far away from LA.
Tom Cruise both starred in and produced the first Mission Impossible film. Hollywood buzzed with rumors of his bitter, behind-the-scenes conflicts with director Brian De Palma.
There are whispered rumors of conflicts that almost are always denied. There were rumors that Tom Cruise and Brian De Palma did not get along at all on the Mission Impossible, first Mission Impossible. There were rumors that there were, just these furious phone calls going back and forth, receivers flung down onto the floor, and Cruise denies that those things ever happened. I suspect that after the experience with De Palma, if it was as bad as the rumors indicated, Cruise was probably very careful about what director he picked for the second one.
Careful or not, when Cruise chose action director John Woo for the sequel, rumor had it that there were as many explosions behind the scenes as there were on the screen.
Nobody in the movie-going public knew that John Woo was locked out of the editing room on Mission Impossible 2 and that they brought in an editor to finish the film because Tom Cruise didn't like what John Woo had done. They would have damaged the film in some way. It would have looked like this is not the director's film. And needless to say, John Woo didn't go around talking about it either because he wants to work in Hollywood. So that's the way it normally works. Whenever you have differences, you paper them over and you put on a happy face in time for the press junket and you move on.
Most first-time directors struggle to master Hollywood's rulebook. Maverick director Tony Kaye simply tore it up.
I mean, what happened to me on American History X was no different to what happens with 8 out of 10 movie directors in this town on every film they make. It's just that they're prepared to take it, they play the game a little better than I do, and that's not the way I want to go.
Tony Kaye's experience was typical of not even first-time directors, but directors in general, in terms of losing some control over the final cut of their film. What wasn't typical was Tony Kaye's reaction to it, which was extreme.
I think with all the differing views, you know, about a movie like American History X, about all the other movies that have encountered similar, you know, anarchy within the collaborators, is basically the principle of filmmaking, that someone has to have the control. Someone has to be trusted with the control, and the director is that person.
In 1997, New Line Cinema head Michael DeLuca geared up to produce American History X, an edgy new script about young white supremacists. DeLuca gave the directing job to first-timer Tony Kaye, famous for his dazzling TV commercials, but a novice in Hollywood.
Mike DeLuca really liked working with Maverick directors. He hired a lot of first-time directors. He liked finding new directors who had been working in commercials, music videos. He was always looking for really exotic new talent.
You know, Tony was well known as a commercial director, highly controversial. Many people wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. Many people wouldn't work without him. The fact is, however, he's very talented, and you know, the hunger in the industry for new talent, directorial talent, is enormous.
I think actually at the end of the day, my sensibility was very much akin to the sort of New Line way of working, that they, you know, it was like a kind of a rock and roll kind of approach to life.
Then I saw what's called a PSA, a public service announcement that he'd done. He'd done something very clever. He had found an addict, had taken his camera and gone to the guy's apartment and just filmed him talking. And it was so beautifully edited and so simply shot that I thought, this is American History X. So I got excited about Tony, and DeLuca liked him, so we hired him.
New Line Cinema was thrilled about its upcoming production of American History X. Armed with sizzling new director Tony Kaye, acclaimed young star Edward Norton, and a red-hot script, who wouldn't be? But when Tony Kaye rejected Ed Norton for the lead, he unknowingly set the stage for a scandal that would grip the film industry for months.
I didn't feel that he would be perfect for this role because I didn't think he had the weight. Edward Norton, you know, he's a very precisioned, technical actor and a very controlling actor, and I just didn't feel that was right.
He didn't want Edward Norton, and he aggressively didn't want Edward Norton in the role. He felt that Edward was a good actor, but that he was the wrong personal type. He's the wrong persona.
The casting issue is pretty simple. You know, the studios want the biggest name with the biggest box office draw in the movie, and they'll often put that actor in the movie even if he's wrong for the part, because it will help them sell the movie.
American History X would have been made without Tony Kaye. Edward Norton was one of the main reasons that movie got made. Tony Kaye did not want Ed Norton, but Tony Kaye never came up with an alternative to Edward Norton.
So Tony agreed, but it was a reluctant agreement, and that was a very, very key event in the development of this picture. The fact is that the seed was planted then, not subtly, but profoundly and very obviously.
Kaye agreed to work with Norton, and filming finally began with Kaye serving as both director and cameraman.
take care of this.
Tony was here all the time with the camera when the actor was right there. There's no way that this bond cannot exist in a positive manner, or else the film will stop shooting. So they made accommodations to each other and found things in and about each other that they could appreciate and respond positively to.
You're goddamn right we are.
We had a great shoot together. We had a fantastic shoot. We brought in an awful lot of footage that was very good, some of it great.
Kay shot an astounding 200 hours of footage for American History X and charged into the editing room confident that he had the makings of a great picture. What he had instead was the raw material for months of turmoil.
Very few directors, have what's known as final cut, where you just, like in your contract, you just have, no matter what you do to the film, that's the film.
Normally the studio or the producer has final cut. So first-time director like Tony Kaye is never going to have final cut. It's something that's earned, and it's something that's sort of a badge of honor in Hollywood.
I entered into the process, particularly on American History X, not even thinking about I should be asking my agent or my this or my that to make sure, or my lawyer, that I have got final cut.
He got to a director's cut, and we tested it in front of an audience. And it tested way above what New Line expected. DeLuca was out of his mind with glee. Out of his mind. Really happy.
New Line thought that they had a pretty good film that had some flaws in it, and they treated Tony like an adult, like an experienced director, and they said, maybe you could work on it a little more and fix it. What happened was that was Tony's opening to be an artist.
What happened next was what led to some questions. Tony was phobic about not having this movie be boring or slow or artsy in the European artsy sense. He wanted it to be a piece that kept you like this the whole time.
I found a wholly different film. A film that I didn't even know was there. A film that needed more work, needed me to shoot some more scenes, and it was that film that I was never allowed to complete.
He actually put together a much shorter cut of the movie, which he thought played better. Unfortunately, a lot of what he cut out was scenes with Edward Norton. So being an actor, when Edward Norton saw this cut and saw that a lot of his work had been cut out, he reacted the way most actors do, which is, well, this is not better, because there's a lot less of me in here.
What I really fell afoul of is that Edward Norton threatened New Line, threatened Mike DeLuca and Bob Shaye that he wouldn't get behind the film unless he was happy with it. And at the end of the day, they had to please him.
New Line finally said, hey, let's try something. Hey, Tony, do you mind if Edward comes in for a little while? Edward came into the editing room. And I think his level of experience in the industry was not great enough yet, Edward's, to understand exactly how offensive that could be to a director. Edward was just being Edward, trying to make the movie better.
There are cases in Hollywood where actors have so much power that they have actually put in their contract or pressure the studio so much that they're allowed to come in and cut. I'll tell you, that is the antithesis of objectivity.
It's not all that unusual in today's Hollywood that actors have a lot of say. I think what was abnormal was that New Line led Edward Norton into the editing room to essentially put together his cut of the movie. That any director would have been upset with. And if Tony Kaye had been a powerful director like a Rob Reiner or Michael Mann, Edward Norton wouldn't have been a million miles anywhere near the editing room.
When brash young Norton breezed in to try his hand on the cut, the die was cast.
Tony felt threatened by that. Tony went into the editing room at night, looked at what Edward had been doing and freaked out.
It was so, horrific to me that I went into another room and I smashed my fist against the wall and I kind of broke my my hand. And it's funny because I went into the first aid department and I said to them, have you had many directors come in like this? And they said, no, you're the first one. I thought, well, that's amazing. All these years and all these films that have been made there all these years, and I'm the first director that's kind of broken their hand punching a wall.
Things went from bad to worse to disastrous.
Well, I don't think they ever intended that Edward would have final cut. What happened was Tony reacted really badly to Edward being invited in. The film ground to a halt. And instead of having a finished film, they had a totally unfinished film.
I punched walls, I broke limbs, I cried, many tears, all those things, because for, 15, 16 years of making television commercials, it was all about, becoming a filmmaker, making great films. It was my legs were cut, I perceived my legs were cut away from me completely.
It was a period where he was incredibly depressed and he felt so attacked. And that led him to he began to have absurd ideas about the movie.
Tony began to lose his way. He lost whatever focus he had originally. He lost his way.
Well, I was in a predicament at the time, and I was this little lone person in a room, in a world that I knew nothing about, intimidated by the process, intimidated by making a film, intimidated by all the meetings, and I had to strike out and voice my opinions in some way.
The way Kay finally chose to strike back was unprecedented. He ran sensational full-page ads in the industry trade papers, railing against the studio's decision to usurp his right to edit his own film. Suddenly, an obscure studio conflict became a Hollywood cause celeb, the talk of the industry.
He wanted to cause a sensation. Everyone in Hollywood loved it because Hollywood thrives on, theater and strange goings-on. So everyone thought this was wonderful. This was like the new circus had come to town.
This is a familiar story. I came to Hollywood with the predictable naivety of an independent filmmaker, determined to do his best in his first effort. What followed was also predictable. I've come to the point in which the severe decision has got to be made, and in fact has been made. I'm not going to surrender my film to anyone who wants to violate my concept of it.
Well, initially, people were very sympathetic with Tony's cause because Tony depicted it that he'd been usurped in the editing room by an actor in the movie, which was not even technically true, but had enough truth to trigger exactly the response that Edward's representatives feared most. So everyone was in a kind of a panic.
When matters came to a head, New Line said, let's have a meeting. Tony, I think, wanted more time to work on the film. New Line wanted some assurances that this would be a finite period of time that he would work on the film. And I think subliminally they wanted Tony to act like a director, to come in there and do what directors do in Hollywood, which is sell them on the movie and say, don't worry, it's really going to be fine. It needs a little tweaking here and there, and it's going to be a great movie, and we're all going to be really proud of it, and it's going to be fantastic. That's what they want to hear from a director. Instead, Tony came in with a rabbi and a priest and a guy claiming to be a Tibetan monk.
Yeah, the priest, the rabbi, and the monk was just, to be honest, I was just going into New Line to have a meeting, and I had more bad news for them to say that, it's not done, it's not finished, I need more time. And because of my, the search for excellence and everything, and I was always very intimidated by them, and I was frightened of going in there, so I thought, well, I'll lighten it up a little bit.
They went nuts, because that was not at all what they wanted to happen. That was a Tony Kaye art stunt.
Kay actually invoked Kubrick, and said, well, Kubrick gets to do this kind of thing, why can't I? The answer is Kubrick was Kubrick. There is not a whole lot of room to let directors decide to take a year to rethink a whole movie that they've just shot.
I think the final request for time didn't even come from Tony, it came from his agent, representative at the time, over the telephone. And the answer was no, lock up the picture.
Tony Kaye had lost his fight with New Line Cinema, but he hadn't lost the war. Staking out a desperate last stand, he appealed to the Directors Guild for an Alan Smithee credit on American History X. As it turned out, his request would help seal the fate of a time-honored Hollywood tradition, the Alan Smithee credit itself, as well as affect his film's fate at Oscar time.
When I decided that I'd lost, really, I was very ashamed of this piece of work, and I didn't want it to go out because it wasn't, when you've worked on something for three years and it's not finished, you don't want anyone to see it.
And so Kaye appealed to the Directors Guild for a Smithee credit, not realizing that he'd made a critical mistake along the way.
One of the conditions of getting an Alan Smithee credit is you have to promise not to badmouth the movie that you've just made. And Tony Kaye blew that even before going to the Directors Guild.
When he started talking publicly about the credit issue, the Guild no longer was a sympathizer with him. They became an adversary.
Actually, I hadn't publicly criticised the film. I publicly criticised the people that I was making the film with.
The Guild disagreed and ruled that Kaye's unprecedented public battle had rendered a Smithee credit out of the question. Since Smithee was beginning to be known outside of Hollywood, both the Guild and the studio agreed that Kaye could take his name off the project and substitute any pseudonym he chose, provided it wasn't Alan Smithee.
I thought to myself, okay, I'm not allowed to use the credit Alan Smithee, so what's the most stupid name I can possibly think of? And Humpty Dumpty instantly came to mind.
Tony Kaye just wanted to sort of stick his finger in the eye of everybody involved in this movie by putting a weird name on there. That wasn't going to fly.
Kaye's choice of Humpty Dumpty was rejected out of hand, and American History X hit the theaters as a film directed by Tony Kaye.
Tony Kaye directed this picture. Tony Kaye has his name on this picture, and I hope Tony Kaye someday is as proud of this movie as I am.
When the film opened in 1998, Edward Norton's on-screen performance won raves, but Tony Kaye's off-screen antics were widely noted by the critics.
Every single major critic, film critic, in the country mentioned Tony's behavior in their reviews of the movie and mentioned his attempt to distance himself from it. And if you don't think that hurt this movie, then you don't understand the film business.
No one will really know for sure whether Tony Kaye prevented it from finding an audience or whether it was like a lot of good movies that was just too difficult and too demanding for a mass audience to see in today's culture. It's one of those or the other.
Given how strongly Kaye had originally objected to Edward Norton as the lead, many appreciated the irony when Norton received an Oscar nomination for Best Actor.
I think he would have won the Academy Award if that film had been properly finished and properly cut. And he was certainly worthy of it.
By the time the dust settled, American History X had left lasting scars on almost everyone involved and shocked an industry deeply allergic to public battles.
The producers never really at any point protected the vision of the director, which I don't think they wholly trusted me ever at any particular point. I think now they do. Now in the light of day that they see what was left, they see that even the aborted movie that went out, it's certainly not a forgotten film, as many films are. I can't, obviously, put all the blame on everybody else. I was very immature in the way I handled it all. I was a very ignorant person, because I didn't know the process.
It's real hard to assign blame. You can only say this is what happened and track what happened. And I understand the human behavior now. For a long time I was too angry to. Now, what's left is the movie itself.
I think it's a good movie. It may have been a better movie, or it may have been a different good movie if Tony Kaye had gotten his final version. The point is, it's a good movie, and he still wanted his name off because it wasn't his vision.
It is a remarkably good movie for a first-time director, and that's what makes the whole Tony Kaye story so amazing. It's the best movie a director has ever tried to take his name off of.
Alan Smithee's days were numbered. By taking his battle public, Tony Kaye had helped shine an unwelcome light on one of the industry's most tightly kept secrets. But Kaye wasn't alone. Controversial screenwriter Joe Esterhaus dragged Smithee completely out of the closet when he penned a satire called Burn, Hollywood, Burn, which centered on the misadventures of a director with the unfortunate name of Alan Smithee.
They took the film away from me. They stole it. They abused me, they raped me, they threatened to kill me.
I said, what you do is you take your name off that. Yeah, you can use that phony name, the one everybody be using.
I can't do that. I am Alan Smithee.
It was a script that was sent to me by Joe Esterhaus. He had come up with a concept of a very different way of doing a film.
I told him how much the studio has always wanted to work with the brothers.
Commenting on Hollywood.
Look, we don't give final cut.
Then they asked, would I like to direct it?
Please, James, I beg you, my name's on this movie.
Well, you know what? Take your name off it. You can use Alan Smithee.
Oh, I am Alan Smithee.
Yeah, you and hundreds of others.
They recut the film after my work. They made a Saturday Night Live sketch out of it, and that was totally not my vision.
I think it can be better.
I hired you.
In one of Hollywood's most ironic twists, director Arthur Hiller requested an Alan Smithee credit on his film about Alan Smithee.
Many people thought that I took my name off for publicity reasons, to help the film. And I thought, if they knew what I went through, I was driving to the DGA to ask to have my name removed. I had to stop the car twice because I thought I was going to pass out. I mean, that, you know, and people think that you were doing it for publicity reasons.
Do you hear me? No one will ever allow you to direct again, Alan.
That let the cat out of the bag. And I think the DGA felt it's already become sort of an open secret. Now it's a joke. The next person that uses that pseudonym, Alan Smithee, it's like we might as well say, don't go see this movie. It's a disaster.
And so, after a 30-year career directing some of Hollywood's very worst pictures, Alan Smithee was finally kicked off the lot. But with Smithee retired, what's an unhappy director to do?
The DGA has decided not to use any single common pseudonym. And in this way, they're going to be better able to hide the conflicts that occur. Now the director will have a choice of 5, or perhaps the director, him or herself, will bring 5 names, and they'll pick one of them.
For the directors and the insiders, we liked it because it is a sign that that is not a visionary picture. Doesn't mean it couldn't be fun to go to. It just isn't something that the director, it isn't what the director had in mind, so the director felt they had to take their name off, so we know it's Alan Smithee.
Like other dubious directorial talents from Ed Wood to Roger Corman, Alan Smithee has emerged as a cult hero.
Damned if I know what caused the cult of Alan Smithee. I started a writing project, and the conceit was that Alan Smithee was a single living individual with a great body of work behind him, and within a year after we started this project and posted the web pages, there were dozens of other websites devoted to Smithee. This all happened within, I'd say, 18 months. There was this white-hot national curiosity about Smithee.
Smithee pops up everywhere, from The Simpsons to CNN.
See, Alan Smithee is a pseudonym.
A book now charts Smithee's career. A tribute band sings his praises.
A bunch of directors got together. We hadn't picked up our instruments in about 20 years. And so when we first got together, we definitely wanted to distance ourselves from the music that we were making. And so we decided on Alan Smithee. It was that or either wear those glasses with the nose and the...
Now, that the secret's out, now among a certain cult crowd, it means a bad film. It means looking back at these films and finding something out about Hollywood.
Look at that!
When you see an Alan Smithee film, it's usually a terrible film.
You're blinded by romance, you're blinded by science. Your condition is critically grave. But don't expect mercy from such an alliance. Suspicion of tradition, so you wave. Short treatment gets you jumping like a real live wire. You need a bit of short treatment.
Her brain, Larry. Her brain was gone when we got here.
It's usually a film that is, for whatever reason, is not good. And it's an embarrassment to all who were in it, behind the scenes, lived in the road where the movie was shot, whatever.
Anything that's happening on the screen, nothing clicks. There's no oomph. You can have a great cast, you can have explosions, gunfire, nudity, and it just ain't there.
Well, how about that?
For 30 years, insiders savored the Smithee credit as a surefire indicator of behind-the-scenes conflict. Many say they miss the fact that they don't have Alan Smithee to kick around anymore.
The name Alan Smithee teaches us a lot about how Hollywood works, but it teaches different things to different people. To the studios, it teaches a way of dealing with conflict. It teaches the Directors Guild a way of getting along with the studios. It teaches directors about a way of disowning a film and protesting that they did not have creative control.
Studios are thrilled about their newfound ability to cover up conflict. But for aggrieved directors, there's no covering up the pain of a film gone terribly awry.
I can't look at some of my better movies without steeling myself because it just brings back the trauma of one scene. What would it have cost them to leave 1 minute and a half long scene that meant everything to me in the picture? Did it make another $1 million because they took that 1.5 minutes out?
It's the end of an era. I mean, it was great fun. I think everybody had a great time with Alan Smithee. It was sort of one of those wonderful emblematic things of, aha, Hollywood has another disaster coming down the pipeline.
Alan Smithee lives. Not very well, but he lives.
Many days go by where I think to myself, you know, should I give Bob Shea a call? And should I say, you know what, can I come back and finish American History X? That day hasn't come yet, but I think I could probably finish that movie, and maybe I will one day. Maybe, actually, I will go back and finish it one day.